Mr. Speaker, that was a speech from the next leader of the Labour Party, and can I say it's one of the best speeches I've heard from a member of the Labour Party in opposition for a long, long time. And do you all know what, Mr. Speaker, what marks it out from their current leader? There was not a single apology in that speech. And that's where it started to go wrong, because as an advisor to the last Labour government, and all other members of the last Labour government are yet to apologise to New Zealanders for the great mess that they left us when we took office. And Grant Robertson needed to apologise for only one thing in that speech. He needed to apologise to his Labour colleagues that will lose their jobs on the 20th of September of this year for not rolling David Cunliffe 3 weeks ago when he had the numbers. Mr. Speaker, this was a very good budget for New Zealand. Bill English's sixth budget in a row under very difficult circumstances where New Zealand had faced one of the steepest recessions over the last 50 years, the global financial crisis, and a budget, Mr. Speaker, that helps bring New Zealanders with us, because New Zealanders have been working so very hard over the last 6 years as New Zealand has had to face the effects of the mess of the last Labour government and the effects of the global financial crisis upon all of their jobs and upon our budget. Mr. Speaker, this budget was about balancing the books. It was cautiously optimistic, and it was all about opportunity for New Zealanders. It was about growth. It was about balancing those government books, about keeping interest rates lower for much longer so Kiwis can keep extra money in their pockets. It was about immigration and a great change so that more New Zealanders find opportunity at home and choose to stay home. And many more New Zealanders choosing New Zealand to return to from Australia, that country that the Labour opposition has said resoundingly over the last 6 years, why can't New Zealand be more like Australia? Do you remember that, our first and second budget, when they criticised us for being cautious? Why can't we be more like the lucky country that's Australia? Well, Mr. Speaker, if New Zealanders were to vote for the Labour Party and the Green Party and the Mana Party and the .com Party and every other party that they won't rule out on the other side to form a government in the next election, then we will be more like that country that they call the lucky country. And isn't this such a different budget to that of Australia's, where everything is going in the opposite direction? So I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, the Labour government with the cabal on the other side who will try to form a government will drag New Zealand in the direction that the current Australian government is having to fix after a Labour-Green coalition over there. This was about jobs, and it was about wages, Mr. Speaker, about families and children, putting them first. And do you know what, Mr. Speaker? For the first time ever in the history of this country, exports have hit $50 billion. Now, every speaker on the side of the opposition in this debate so far has been talking about the great myth of the manufacturing crisis and the perilous state that our export economy is in. For the first time ever, we've hit $50 billion of exports based on a productive and growing economy. Mr. Speaker, we as a government have been working very hard to get the government's books back into shape. Our very first budget, Treasury forecast, after the mess the opposition had left us, that this country would almost never be back to surplus, and that debt would continue to grow and grow and grow for the next 10, the next 20, the next 30 years. Well, Bill English has done a significant job of work on behalf of New Zealanders, and we are predicting through the last budget a modest surplus in the coming financial year, with those surpluses growing up to 2018 up to $3.5 billion. A significant turnaround. One of the first countries in the world, Mr. Speaker, of the developed world, who are forecasting not only a growth or significant growth, but forecasting surpluses. And that gives the government choices, more choices about what we spend money on. And those are not choices that were there when we came to office 6 years ago, and these are choices that will be offered to the government that this government, over 6 budgets, has had to work so strongly with the help of New Zealanders to be able to deliver. Now, where will this come from? Well, Mr. Speaker, some very good news around the economy. It's grown by 3.8% to the year 31st of March of this year, one of the higher levels of growth of any developed country, any developed economy in the world, and forecast to grow by 4% next year. Now, we'll hear the cries from the opposition. They'll say, well, that's just because of Christchurch and Canterbury. Well, Mr. Speaker, Christchurch and Canterbury is a part of that growth story. But we must also remember that Christchurch was our fastest growing city, it was our second largest city, and its growth was based upon production. It was a productive growth. And the earthquakes that hit Canterbury and Christchurch did great damage to the New Zealand economy, great damage to people's livelihoods down there. And for the government to be able to invest and work with the people of Christchurch to turn that around is part of that success story. 4% growth predicted for next year. Now, Mr. Speaker, within that, what does that mean? Well, average wages have increased by $3,000 over the past 2 years. $3,000 extra on average in the pockets of hard-working New Zealanders. And that growth is forecast to increase by an extra $7,000 on average by the year 2018, so that the average wage will be $62,300. That's why we need to make sure that we have another 3 years of stable government, another 3 years of carefully managing the economy, another 3 years of being cautious around spending of government resource, of taxpayers' taxes, so that we can continue to build on the economy and grow real-time wages for New Zealanders by an extra $7,000 up to the year 2018. 84,000 jobs have been created in the year to March, and Treasury forecasts 172,000 jobs will be created over the next 4 years, Mr. Speaker. Quite a contrast to what we found 9 years ago, when the productive economy in New Zealand was already in recession. The productive economy, the people out there that manufacture, that make things, that add value to them, that sell them, that export them, they were already in recession. And, Mr. Speaker, in a very short period of time, as the whole of the world has grappled with the global financial crisis, we have been able to turn that story around. So we have a stronger manufacturing base in New Zealand. We have more productive businesses. We've invested in all parts of the economy, in infrastructure, so that we can be more productive and therefore more competitive. And, Mr. Speaker, this means that our economy continues to grow. There are more jobs for New Zealanders, and those jobs pay much better. Now, Mr. Speaker, the other great part about this budget was some of the things that we were able to reprioritise and spend money on. Grant Robinson said that this was a budget that missed opportunity. Well, Mr. Speaker, this budget delivered by Bill English was all about opportunity, about helping children and families. Free GP visits and free prescriptions for all children under the age of 13. 4 weeks extra paid parental leave for families. $155.7 million extra for early childhood education. Getting more children participating, supporting their families, keeping fees down. Not just throwing money at a problem as the last government did, Mr. Speaker, but spending it productively so more young people in New Zealand will be able to go and be involved, increasing participation rates in early childhood education. $33.4 million extra to support vulnerable children, including 8 new children's teams to work with at-risk children around the country, Mr. Speaker. Building a more productive and competitive economy, $69 million for NZTE to do more work in China, South America, the Middle East, help 200 more firms break into overseas markets. $57 million of contestable funding for science and innovation. We're at the cutting edge of that in this country, Mr. Speaker. $53 million to establish another 3 centres of research excellence. $83 million to lift tuition subsidies for science, for agriculture, for health sciences. $20 million to increase apprenticeship reboot places from 6,000 to 20,000 places, Mr. Speaker, and ACC on track to reduce costs for New Zealanders. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that very important to us education. $858 million of new spending over 4 years will lift our investment in early childhood education in primary and in secondary schools. We'll spend $10.1 billion a year. This government and Heke Prata's commitment to education is second to none, Mr Speaker. It's been spent to give New Zealanders, young New Zealanders, every opportunity that I can. Can I say this was a good budget for New Zealand? I want to thank Bill English for his hard work over 6 years, and I look forward to the next 6 weeks, Mr Speaker, when we talk to New Zealanders about the need for another 3 years of stable, careful government and careful management of our economy.
Dr. Russell Norman.